So I found out that we have a listener who went to EVO and made it to the top 32 for Injustice 2. His name's Sam. He's cool. I mean, he could not beat us in Star Wars fighting game.
You know, in order to win at Star Wars fighting game, you have to care about Star Wars fighting game.
Welcome back to Cartridge Space Radio. I am Donald, joined always by Brad.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good because we once again are in the fall of 97 in spirit.
Yes.
We're actually not technically in the fall of 9. But we are here to talk about a big release game, Final Fantasy VII.
Maybe the biggest release on the PlayStation ever, for the original PlayStation. Almost absolutely the biggest game release up to that point. I don't think any game was anywhere near as hyped, as marketed, as anticipated, which is kind of weird when you think about it because the other Final Fantasy games were kind of growing in popularity, but they're still sort of underground a little bit. You had to be kind of a real game nerd to know about Final Fantasy III, which was 6 in the insane Final Fantasy numbering system, but yeah, 7 was a really big deal.
Final Fantasy VII was bizarre to me because kids at school who didn't really play a lot of games or talk about games were suddenly talking about Final Fantasy VII. I was like, this is a weird JRPG. Why are you talking about this? You're on the football team. Like, we were up all night playing Final Fantasy VII. It's like, what is going on with my world?
That's a better experience than what I saw working at the store. Was a lot of people who had never even think about playing an RPG, saw all these amazing commercials, print ads, whatever, hype for Final Fantasy VII. They're like, this is going to be the best game ever. I normally only play Madden, but I have to try this. And they were pretty disappointed for the most part. You know, just because it wasn't Madden.
The way it was advertised kind of made it look action gamey.
Yeah.
Which is kind of deceiving because this was pre-internet where everyone could get all the information. So it looked like a very action-heavy game, and then you got it, and no,
anti-action.
Anyway, we are in the fall of 97, which you may remember from last week is just our celebration of the biggest games and what some consider, mainly me and you, the biggest stretch in just rad video games.
Yeah. Definitely just one of my favorite stretches of time, you know, if you want to call it a season or a quarter or whatever. Not how you normally think about like games, but definitely a really great stretch. Overall, a good year, mostly because of how strongly it ended.
But we are about to talk about spiky hair and terrorism.
Yeah, and ridiculously unwieldy swords.
So earlier this week, you said, how much of Final Fantasy VII's plot do you remember? And I was faced with the horrible fact of my life that I have forgotten most of Final Fantasy VII.
So, how long has it been since you played Final Fantasy VII?
I played it on release. And then probably like 4 or 5 years after that, I played it again.
Okay.
And that is the last time I played Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, we're pretty much in the same boat. I played it when it first came out, and I went back to it in, I think, like 04, 05, to write about it for a website that I was doing at the time. So for both of us, it's been a while. So I had the advantage of I went online and I looked up some plot summaries. I kind of refreshed myself on the storyline and plot of Final Fantasy VII. You have not. So why don't you try to walk us through what you think the plot to Final Fantasy VII is, and we'll see how close you get.
Now, I did not prep myself on purpose for the sole reason of us pulling this shenanigan off, and I'm sure as you talk about it, it'll come back. But here we go. There's a train going into a city, and then some geo-terrorists jump off, but then you find out you are a part of the geo-terrorists.
Okay.
You blow up a nuclear reactor. Then a girl picking flowers finds Cloud in a church.
You're not not wrong so far, but when you say it like that, it really sounds kind of disjointed. It's like dream logic. Like they blew up a reactor and then all of a sudden you're in a church.
This is all I can stitch together on the fly like this. Then you go to a secret hideout and the group isn't happy to see you. And then Cloud dresses in a dress and tries to seduce a mayor. And then you leave the city. You go on a date with a red dog. Then you meet a vampire. A house burns down and Sephiroth walks through the flames. Eris dies. Then you meet a statue who may or may not be Cloud's mother. And Cloud's not okay with that, and Sephiroth's okay with it. And then maybe Sephiroth is Cloud's brother, or twin, or clone. And then you find Sid. Sid has a cool airship. Is there a real-time strategy fight in this one, or is that Final Fantasy IX?
No, 7 does have like a little real RTS mini game at Fort Condor.
Okay, where you're with the chocobos and stuff. Then, this whole time you are summoning the most crazy summons in the fights that take like 6 or 7 minutes for the animation to play out. Then you fly the airship into the core of the planet where you fight a giant guy on both sides of him and you have to keep switching between teams. Then you get out of the volcano. Then Red 13 and her children are looking at Midgar that is grown over by foliage X amount of years later. And that is what I remember of Final Fantasy VII.
That is actually not terrible. You're not that far off. You maybe missed a couple of little plot points here and there. Final Fantasy VII is about Cloud, is the main character that you play as, and he starts out with this group of eco-terrorists that's trying to stop energy production because the Shinra Corporation has developed a method of creating energy where they extract the life force of the planet, which is like what happens to you after you die, and then they're like, that sounds like a good way to get electricity. Let's do that, and everybody's fine with it. And the planet's dying because you're sucking up all its light force to turn the lights on. You know, it's probably like really clean. Like there's no pollution, no carbon dioxide or anything. Just sucking the literal life right out of the planet. You get captured, I think, but then you get broken out because Sephiroth kills everyone in the Shinra building and like just leaves the door unlocked for you so you can walk out. And you spend like half the game chasing him, and then you find out that it was actually clones of him that he controls with his mind because he's actually buried in an ice cave at the North Pole.
Huh. Wait, was there a giant robot that came up out of the water and shot a giant anime laser beam into a tower building from its mouth at some point?
Yes, that's Weapon, which was created by the planet itself to defend itself from stuff like this, apparently. So, somewhere in all this, they've woken up Weapon. Sephiroth's plan is to crash a meteor into the planet and then, like, suck up all the life force that, like, is in the crater, I guess, and that'll, like, drain the entire planet of energy. Along the way, you get a super smart lion dog and a skinny girl who Sephiroth kills, and Sid, who's an astronaut. I think you go to space at one point. On the scale of Final Fantasy insanity, this one's up there.
I mean, I was just trying to summon random facts of this game from the deep, deep, dark pools of my mind. But space?
Yeah, you go into space briefly, and I don't remember why. But, like, you have to find Sid, because he's the only one who knows how to go to space.
Well, I mean, Sid in all Final Fantasies has something to do with the airship. But I thought it was like an open deck airship. You don't want to go to space in like a pirate boat.
No, it's like a different thing. Like, they go to space, and then they come back, and then they're like, oh, by the way, I also have an airship. I don't remember if the airship is open deck or not. I know the one in Final Fantasy VI is. Trying to think, like, some of the other crazy things that happen in this game besides the electric company that's sucking all the life out of the planet, that's turning souls into electricity.
There's 6 snowboarding.
Yeah, there's a snowboarding part, there's a motorcycle chase. 3/4 of the way through the game, you find out that the backstory of the hero it was like some other guy, and Cloud is a nobody.
Now, did Cloud lie or did Cloud know?
I think he got tortured, and like him and the guy that he took on the identity of both got like captured and like messed with, and I think it like messed up his mind, and he really thought he was the other guy. The other guy didn't live. Spoilers all over the place for this game.
Yeah, that should just be at the top of the show every episode. When you hear the theme music, you should just assume spoilers incoming. That's a rule from now on in this show. I do remember that my PlayStation died right when Weapon blew up the tower.
Oh no.
And the laser wouldn't move out of the little cradle anymore, and I had to go buy another PlayStation 1 to finish Final Fantasy VII.
The first couple years of PlayStations, people forget what an unreliable system it was. The Xbox 360 kind of like lowered the standards for how unreliable a system could be, but like PlayStation 1s in the first few years failed like crazy. I think I had 3 of them. They originally came in like this box with black edges. We just knew at the store, like, black box PlayStations were a problem. You know, so people would return them and get the ones that came in a box with red borders. And those were considered better, but even those still failed a fair amount.
I read later that problem, you could just pop that thing open and fix it by tightening a screw. Because it was just a screw that worked itself out. Because that laser was all over the place in that Final Fantasy VII disc. Like, if you put in the PlayStation 2, you can hear the laser like, what are you doing to me?
We used to call them skip stations.
That's about right. Final Fantasy VII at the time bothered me some because it was such a departure from fantasy. It was tech.
Yeah, it was a little more sci-fi-ish. Final Fantasy VI is like the ultimate like steampunk game.
Yeah, Magitech.
Yeah, it's more modern. There's still like some castles and that, but it's more modern than like your typical, you know, what you think of as an RPG with like, you know, kings and horses and whatnot. There's still some aspects of kind of like a Ren Fair thing to it, but it's got a real steampunk vein to it. But Final Fantasy VII is sci-fi. It's futuristic.
So, what's our big question this episode?
I thought the big question was how much of Final Fantasy VII do you remember?
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about Shinra's bottom line and how Sephiroth is just screwing that up.
Yeah, they have a weird business model because their business model basically is suck souls out of the earth and turn them into energy.
So let me get this cycle correct here. You die, your soul goes into the earth.
Into the life stream, yes, which is a physical thing in the earth.
So it's like a beam that just is going through the center of the earth, or is it like a spider web?
I think it's like a liquid. Like Cloud falls into it and he just like is like floating in it.
Oh.
So like your soul is liquefied and goes into the center of the planet if you're not a dead person who just fall into a ravine and land in it, I guess.
Is that where Eris dies? Because she dies in a pool.
Well, I think that's just like a pool. Like it's the city of the ancients or something. They have fountains and it's nice.
That scene always bothered me because Cloud is looking at her and then the sword goes through her. But they're in a big open room, standing in water, and they didn't hear Sephiroth coming.
He, like, falls, like, out of the sky like he's Batman or something.
Majestic hair blowing as he falls. You think someone falling, because it went through her gut straight forward towards him. So he would have to fall, recover, stab her, and the whole time Cloud was unaware of these events happening.
He's not the best fighting guy.
What's that sword? You can't get it out quick.
Yeah, Cloud runs around with a sword that basically looks like I don't know, a steel girder. Like you wouldn't use it to fight, you'd use it to construct a building with. It's like 3 feet wide and 9 feet long.
Yeah, you hit somebody with it, like if you successfully swing it over your shoulder and bring it down, it's gonna kill a fool in one swing. It's ridiculous. The most iconic sword in Final Fantasy.
You remember Hacksaw Jim Duggan had the 2x4 and he'd like, you know, give the thumbs up, he'd be like, oh, and then he'd like, I don't think he actually hit other wrestlers with the 2x4 because that would probably kill them. But Cloud's kind of like that. He's just got like this gigantic piece of steel that's vaguely sword shaped, and he's just like, ho, and tries to like run him over. I just realized I desperately want a version of Final Fantasy VII where all your party members are 80s wrestlers.
Some reason in this show we always loop back around to, hey, you know what would make this game better? 80s wrestlers.
But it's true. I almost wish that I knew how to do like programming and modding and stuff, because like every classic game I would just swap it out with 80s wrestlers. You know, Final Fantasy VII would just be my masterpiece.
So was there like this is very fuzzy in my mind, was there like a sarcophagus with a lady's face on it?
Yes.
And is that where Sephiroth is?
Inside that sarcophagus is Genova. Sephiroth thinks that he's descended from this race called the Ancients that like fly around the galaxy setting up planets and then leave when they're all set. And it turns out very late in the game you find out that he's descended from Genova, who you think is an ancient, and then it turns out that Genova was actually this other alien that came to the planet and like messed up everything, and that's what he's created from. Aeris is an ancient. And Cloud has no shot with her. Like, the whole climax of the game is, like, you know, Cloud likes this girl, and then, like, Sephiroth kills her. And then it turns out that actually, like, the guy that Cloud switched personalities with, that was her old boyfriend. And, like, he never really had a shot with her.
I thought you got to pick who you romance in that game.
Not exactly. There's one date in the whole game, and it's based on, like, who you're nicest to throughout your dialogue choices, but it never is like Skyrim or Baldur's Gate where you're actually, like, romancing a character. It's not like that. It's just, like, you make your dialogue choices, and then all of a sudden there's, like, one part where you're at a theme park, and, like, whichever character you've been nicest to, you go on a date with.
Huh. So I always took Red 13 with me, so...
The lion dog with the tail on fire who's super intelligent?
Because I was like, it's a dog. I'm going to be nice to a dog. These other two just seem so needy. The dog just is like, pat my head. I'm super intelligent. I can make potions. I don't know if she can make potions. I just, for some reason, thought she could make potions.
I think the very first time I played through it, I got the date with Aeris, which it's stacked to make that more likely. And then the second time I played through it, I got it like with something really weird. Like it was like Barrett or like that cat that's riding on top of a Moogle. We didn't even talk about that. You have a party member that's like a robot cat riding on top of a big fat Moogle called Catseath, I think. No one uses that character ever. Like it's a mandatory character. You get it fairly early in the game. Like it's just like, yeah, you're gonna sit this one out.
Now, is that character in the swamp?
There's a swamp in this game?
No, that's Final Fantasy IX. There's a very similar character who is a chef.
Oh, yeah, it's like a frog.
I remember a lot more from 9, because I really like 9, because it was a fantasy setting, and it had Freya in it, and she's the best.
Yeah, so how many of the Final Fantasies have you played?
Let's see. I never played 2, so 1, 4, a little bit of 5, 6, 7. I bounced off 8 hard. 9, 10, I made it all the way to the point where they said blitzball too much and then quit.
So not very far.
No. 11, I played the online one for a bit.
That was the online one.
I was like, I don't like this. And then we tried to sell it on eBay, and eBay said we weren't allowed to do that. I played 12 because it's Star Wars, and I love Star Wars. And I started 13, and then I realized I didn't really enjoy Final Fantasy anymore in its current form, and that is kind of where I bounced off the franchise.
Okay, so let's just take 6, 7, 9. Those seem to be the ones that you are the most familiar with.
4.
4. Okay.
4 is my favorite Final Fantasy game.
Okay, so we'll say 4, 6, 7, 9. Which one would you say is the most insane out of those? Like, if you had to rank them in terms of insanity, how do they go?
Okay, 4 is not insane at all.
4 ends on the moon. They go to the moon and it's like not like Final Fantasy VII where it's sci-fi and they go to space. Like this is a totally like kind of stereotypical RPG with castles and knights and whatever. And then the final stage is on the moon.
Okay, yes, you're right, but that's like a spike in insanity on a game that is mostly just low-level insanity that just goes boop at the end and you're like, whoa!
I'm inclined to agree that 4 is the least insane of the ones that we're talking about.
6 might be the emotionally most insane. There's a lot of ups and downs. You do body slam a train at one point.
I forgot. Train suplex.
Yeah, you can suplex a train. Just the first thing I think when someone says, hey, Final Fantasy VI, is watching him pick up the train and just drop that thing.
Suplex City on a train.
But it's not super crazy. A city does go into the sky.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, by RPG standards, that's not too nuts. The world ends halfway through the game. Like, they destroy the world. And, like, the second half is kind of... I don't want to say it's, like, Fallout, because it's still, like, not, like, that time frame. But, like, it's, you know, post-apocalyptic.
It's no Chrono Trigger in the future.
No.
9 is actually not that nuts.
9 is bonkers. I think before we can decide between 6 and 9 in terms of insanity, we need to revisit that the main villain in 6 you think is like a mini boss, and then he turns out to be like halfway through the game he turns out to be like the like super evil guy. He looks like a Harlequin. He gets all the funny lines up to that point, and then all of a sudden he just like turns like super evil. So the world ends and the bad guy's a Harlequin.
9, there's just genocide of an entire race.
Now, 9, the main villain is, as far as I can tell, the Blue Meanie from the Yellow Submarine movie. And I think they're trying to make two planets crash into each other. Or, like, merge or something.
They need to use this magic to mesh the world so they can live again. And he has to kill all the black mages because they're getting in his way. And Vivi's the only one who survives. And then the queen is in on it. I like Final Fantasy IX. It's just I don't think I've ever been like, man, this story is top notch. I need to pay attention. I like the world and the places you go, but I also like smashing the X button when people are talking in it. So I'm like, don't care, don't care, don't care, don't care. It's 7, though. 7, it's got to be the most insane, right?
Yeah, I think I'm with you on these rankings. Like, 4 is pretty normal other than the moon part right at the end. 6, you know, a little more crazy, but not out of the range of what you'd see in an RPG other than the train suplex, and they actually, like, end the world halfway through the game. 9, you have the Blue Meanie and planets smashing into each other. But yeah, 7 is just, like, out there. You have a talking lion dog with a flame tail, a vampire, an energy company that like runs on life force.
The planet sends a kaiju to stop them.
What else? The bad guy is actually in a cave for half the game, maybe longer. So what you think is a bad guy is just clones, and then what you think is the good guy is a guy who is like stolen the identity of a different guy. 7 is nuts.
So did Aerith know the whole time that Cloud was lying and just kind of let him go with it?
Probably, because she was like in a serious relationship with the guy that he thinks he is.
Was the other guy's name Cloud Strife?
No, his name was Zack.
That'd be really confusing for her. She was probably like, oh, Sephiroth killed me. Now I don't have to talk to this guy anymore.
You know, it was probably actually like kind of not cool for her. Like the guy died. It's not like they broke up and she hates him. Like he died. So it's like this guy who thinks that he's your dead boyfriend comes and he's like following you around and he's like, hey, want to go on a date? You want to ride the Ferris wheel? I think I'm your old boyfriend. And she's like, yeah, but you're not. And I miss him and this is hard for me.
That must have been a horrific torturing between the two of them if his entire identity got erased and he had to take on another. But it also means that Zack talked about himself a lot. Maybe that was the torture. You just sit here and listen to Zack talk about himself the entire time. Let me tell you about my girlfriend.
We didn't even get to the fact that one of the characters' arm is a Gatling gun. Like, Barrett's arm is a Gatling gun.
Okay, I have questions about this. Gatling guns, they're very large.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's got a Gatling gun or it's like a minigun. Like a T2 minigun. So, in Terminator 2, which is my point of reference for most things in life.
That aren't 80s wrestlers.
That's right. There's a huge belt of bullets that go into the gun on the side.
Yeah.
And, shells are flying out. It looks really cool. It's in slow motion. He doesn't kill anyone. Very dramatic. Where is the belt of bullets? And does he just drag live ammo around on a belt behind him? Because you don't want to drag live ammo across the floor. That's bad. How does he pull the trigger?
There's the real question.
Does he, just tighten a tendon and it starts shooting?
The lack of ammo, you could chalk up to graphical limitations. Didn't have a way to animate it or whatever. But yeah, how is he firing that gun?
And a minigun has a kick to it. He just sticks his arm out, holds himself at the elbow, and starts shooting.
Well, he is pretty strong.
You fire off 6 or 7 rounds of that, it's going to start working its way up, and you're probably going to snap your arm.
It's probably going to just, sever itself from your arm. You're just going to have a flying minigun and a bloody stump.
Just bouncing around the middle of the battleground.
That could be his overdrive attack. The gun just detaches from his arm and keeps shooting and sprays bullets everywhere.
Killing everybody on his own team. He's like, why has this always happened to me? I'm the worst terrorist ever.
Or the best.
I always think of Tifa and I think of her sitting on a water tower. Why is that?
She and Cloud, the real Cloud, not the Zack that he thinks he is, lived in the same hometown, and I think maybe they used to hang out up there.
So she actually likes Cloud, who thinks he's Zack, and Cloud, who thinks he's Zack, likes Tifa, and secretly Barrett just wants to punch him in the back of the head?
Yeah, pretty much.
Doesn't Barrett not like him?
It takes a while, yeah. He doesn't trust him because Cloud is ex-Shinra military, and he thinks he might be a spy.
So this is a corporation, the Shinra Corporation, who also runs a military?
Yeah, and they run the city, which is not a profitable endeavor.
We've touched on that in the past.
Yeah, right. It didn't work for Umbrella. It doesn't work for Shinra.
So Shinra owns a city, they run a military, they are sucking the life out of the planet and dealing with eco-terrorism.
I just want to put a warning out there if the guy from Amazon or if Mark Zuckerberg or Tim Cook, if any big CEOs of giant companies out there are listening right now, don't try to branch into the running a city business because it just always ends badly and there's no profits there.
Right, isn't Seattle run by Amazon?
Yeah, but it's sort of a shadow government.
Also, on the flip side of that, if Mark Zuckerberg, any of them say, hey, I'm starting a city and we have a private military, don't move there.
No, wouldn't recommend it.
No. Things will go wrong. They will cut off your thumbs and staple them to a wall and be like, you all like this city now. How far into the game are we at this point?
Oh, we've jumped all over the place.
Okay, so I distinctly remember Cloud puts on a dress and tries to meet the mayor.
I don't even think it's the mayor. It's just this guy. Yeah, there's a scene in a brothel, and you dress in drag and try to pass yourself off as one of the working girls, I think. Depending on the dialogue choices you make, the scene can go pretty far. I mean, not explicitly.
This is the second PlayStation 1 game we've discussed that contains a brothel. What was going on in the PlayStation 1 era that we weren't aware of? Is that a thing? Programmers we're famous game programs. We can go to brothels and then we don't have to date girls.
We're famous game programmers, said no one ever.
So, I think you eventually get out of Midgar.
Yeah. That is a very apt way of putting it. You eventually get out of the very first city in the game. It takes forever.
Isn't it like a full disc?
It's a full disc, yeah. It's like 15 hours out of a 40-hour game.
Wow.
Before you get to the world map.
The thing that I remember from this world map is you got Midgar, and there's like nothing else. It's like all of humanity flocked to this one place and they built this mega city, and then you got like the village and the snowy mountain where you can snowboard, which I believe is where I finally figured out about materia. Like I'd been playing up to that point and I couldn't figure out how materia worked, and then I figured it out and I was like, whoa, this makes fighting easier. I remember there was a chocobo farm where you could rent the chocobos to ride around the world map.
Yeah, you had to rent the chocobo because there was like this like super difficult for that stage of the game boss monster that would chase you around this one area of the map, and if you had the chocobo you could outrun it, but otherwise like it would just fight and destroy you.
Couldn't you like pick two to breed to try to get rare chocobo?
Yeah, there was a whole thing with breeding rare chocobos. The better they were, the more different types of terrain they could cross. So like the standard one like couldn't cross water or mountains, but then like the better one could go over mountains, and then the best one could go over water, and that was important because there was a super secret materia hidden on an island that the airship couldn't land on. And then you could get like this like awesome materia that summoned like the entire Knights of the Round Table. And it took like 20 minutes for them all to like come out. You know, you're fighting a little rabbit or something, and you're just like, I summoned the Knights of the Round Table. And like they all come out and it takes 20 minutes, and it's like, Lancelot stabs the rabbit. Galahad hits it with a sword. Merlin casts a magic spell.
If it's Knights of the Round Table, does that mean this game takes place on Earth?
Sure, why not?
Maybe they have their own version of the Knights of the Round Table. I remember one where a tower comes out of the ground and then water starts spewing out of it. Then, like 45 minutes later, after seeing every scale of a giant snake, it bites the person for a lot of damage, and then it's over. Was that one of them? Leviathan?
Maybe. I think that might have been in 8.
Okay. Was 7 the one where you could summon an asteroid or a meteor and it zoomed way out from Earth? Or was that 9?
No, I think that's in 7, but I think that's Sephiroth's attack near the end. He's got an attack called Supernova, where like a meteor like crashes into the sun and makes the sun blow up, and it like blows up right to the very edge of your characters and then retreats, and they take like a ton of burn damage.
That seems like a one and done kind of attack. Like, I blew up the sun. We are now all going to freeze to death in a couple hundred years.
You managed to figure out the power to like pull an asteroid out of the cosmos, fly it into the sun in a way that makes the sun explode, and the sun explodes like just short of the people you're trying to kill. Like just creeps right up to them and stops, and you're like, no, come on!
That has to be really depressing. You've been sitting there doing the math for years and years, and you're like, okay, this is the exact conditions. Then you pull it off and you're just like a foot short. And they're like, whoa, I got a wicked suntan. Thanks, man.
And then the sun goes back to normal.
So is it just like a solar flare?
It's a big one. Like Mercury and Venus are gone.
Oops. And, you know, most of half of the entire planet would be gone, too.
I mean, the Earth rotates. If he had just, like, done it, like, a minute later, he would have incinerated those people.
Forgot to calculate daylight savings time. Oh, Sephiroth, you idiot. So, there's a part where a house is on fire, and you can run through it collecting treasure chests. Why was the house on fire?
Oh, okay. Sephiroth comes to Cloud's hometown. This takes place in the past when he's still like a good guy, and Shinra has like their like archives there for whatever reason. Like it's a normal town, they have a mansion and they keep all their records, all their archives are in the basement of this mansion. And he starts reading up on it and realizes that he's not a normal person. He was created in a lab out of experiments. And that knowledge drives him nuts. And then he burns down the town and like goes to grab the ancient that he was created out of, which is being kept in that sarcophagus that we talked about earlier. And yeah, he just loses it and like burns down the town. So you wake up in the burning house and you go chase him down.
So once again, an evil corporation puts a mansion in a town full of deep, dark secrets.
Yeah.
Is that just like a common plot point that everyone passed around in the PlayStation 1 era?
I'm kind of wondering, like, what the record keeping for Japanese corporations is like in real life. Like, if, like, Honda just, like, has a mansion somewhere in Tokyo, and in the basement of that mansion has, like, all their car designs since, like, the 50s or whatever. And it's like, well, it's a good thing we're not evil, but, you know, here's some cars.
But maybe we are. Who knows? This airbag is made out of dead people's souls. So, you meet a vampire in a cave.
Yeah.
He joins your team and you promptly walk outside with him. And he's fine.
Yep, maybe he gets all sparkly and the PlayStation just couldn't render that.
Wow. You Seattle people and your sparkly vampires.
You know, I mean, Vincent is terrible. He's worthless, so he might as well just be a Twilight vampire.
I think he sticks out in my mind because I was like, a vampire? This is stupid. Like, you can fully miss meeting Vincent, I believe.
Yeah, him and Yuffie. Here's another one of those, like, 20-year-old games that I'm, like, secretly worried that for the last 2 decades I've been pronouncing all the names wrong.
I always said Yuffie.
Yuffie, sure.
Whatever. I mean, you get them and you're like, oh man, I have to completely not level these people up at all. And then get to the final scene with your core team, and it's like, you have to build a secondary team. And you're looking at them, and you go like, but they're all like level 4.
It's like,
what?
You got your main team of like these like awesome warriors with their weapons and they're all ready to go, and then like your B team is just like a dog with a hat on and like a 3rd grader with some crayons.
And Jeff Foxworthy asking if you know as much as a 5th grader. It's like, get out of here, Jeff Foxworthy.
But be on my B team.
You might be a dead secondary B team if and if they die, it's game over.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't even just, like, use them as a distraction. Like, all right, you're going to make the noble sacrifice while my real team, like, goes in and does stuff. It's like, no, you have to use these guys.
I was perfectly fine with the thought that they would die in that fight, and I would build a memorial with their names more or less spelled right on it, and my hero team would survive. But no, I had to go find a save point that was before that dungeon, put all those idiots in a team together and just grind.
Bosses in RPGs tend to hang out at the back of like these caves that are full of the toughest monsters in the game. Do you think they get along, or is it like anytime that boss wants to leave his fortress or cave, like he has to fight a bunch of scary monsters also?
I think bosses in JRPGs are actually incredibly insecure and fearful because they're like, okay, I have to hide in the back of this cave with all these overpowered monsters because anything coming at me is going to be so beat down by the time it gets to me, I can win. So it's a giant insecurity thing. But yeah, they might have to fight everything if they want to go get like a Wendy's quarter pounder.
The flaw in that plan is that all you need to recover from fighting all those things is if you survive, you're not going to be beat up when you get to the boss because, like, a healing potion costs, like, 50 cents. Like, one of the first things I do in a Final Fantasy game is once I get, like, a little bit of money, buy the maximum number of all the healing items. And it doesn't even, like... It's not hard to do. It's not like you spend all that money. You're like, oh, now I can't buy equipment. And it's like, oh, hey, I bought the maximum number of healing potions and I still have $1 million.
Economies are always terribly broken in these games. By the end of the game, you've maxed out your money thing. You're like, I don't buy anything because my healer has a spell that heals you now, heals your great-grandchildren in the future, and then heals their great-grandchildren in their future. It's so powerful. And when you hit the initial wave, it's basically like Sephiroth's sun explosion, just with healing throughout time. Like, your ancient ancestors who are dead in the grave, when they were alive, they got healed by it. So money, healing, it doesn't matter by the end. The only thing that tripped me up in that last fight was the B team, who, you're like, Cloud, I wet myself over here, and Cloud's like, oh man, hold it together, Barrett. I can't unzip my pants. I got a machine gun hand.
I had 7 playable characters. 1 died, and now I have to put Kate Seath on the roster.
No one's gonna play this character. He's really stupid. Kill Eris. That seems like a poor... No, we can't kill... Listen, Kate Seath is the boss's favorite character. Kill Eris so they can be on the team. Oh.
You know, the most tragic part about the death of Eris is that she had the weapon that could level up 8 materia at once. It was just like you have a 1-person materia farm that's like leveling all your magic and making it super powerful, and then she dies and it's like, oh, I gotta go back to like using 2 of these at a time.
Can you remove her of all of her equipment right before that cutscene?
I think any of the equipment that is usable by other players, it just ends up back in your inventory. I don't think you lose anything other than but the weapon is specific to her, and that's what holds 8 materia at once.
I did read some years later that there was a glitch that would return her to life, and then you could finish out the game without Kate Seath.
I remember all these dumb philosophical discussions on message boards about if you use the glitch, is she truly alive? Because plot wise, everybody acts like she's dead. She'll be in your party and they'll be like, man, I'm still sad about her getting killed.
No, she never was, because she is a code of math.
I think Final Fantasy VII puts us in sort of an awkward juxtaposition because I'm the guy who doesn't really like JRPGs, but I think I like Final Fantasy VII more than you do.
So, don't hate me, people. I don't really like Final Fantasy VII.
Outrage! Torches! Pitchforks!
It's probably why it's the one that I have the most trouble recalling, because I remember at the time it was too sci-fi for me, and I really, really thought, why can't I be Sephiroth? Because all of these insufferable idiots that I'm forced to play at kind of deserve to be cut down. And I want to be the one with fabulous hair, because my guy does not have fabulous hair. Sephiroth's like, yo, check out this flowing mane, this cool coat, and my awesome sword skills. And Cloud's like, I'm your boyfriend. So, no, I actually don't really like Final Fantasy VII that much. I respect it for what it is. It's impressive. It was a monumental moment in JRPGs. It's like when it crossed the line where people started paying attention to JRPGs, which is pretty great. I mean, people paid attention before, but they were the weird kid on the playground. Me.
Yeah, it was a real fringe genre.
So it really brought it into the limelight with its cinematic nature. It was very grand in scope, and I understand why people like it, because for a lot of people it was their very first JRPG, and that sticks with you. I respect it from that. It's just, as far as Final Fantasy goes, I played 1, and then did we leap right to 4?
Yeah, what they originally called Final Fantasy II was actually the 4th game in the series.
Yeah, so I went 1, 4, 6.
Because 5 didn't come out here either.
No, that was later. So I had played those on the Super, or NES to Super Nintendo, and then this came out and everyone was like, wow, this story is so grand. I was like, no, Final Fantasy 3 at the time. 6. The opera scene alone. Holy cow, this is actually very dramatic. The Magitech Factory. Everyone who plays 6 thinks of the Magitech Factory, and they're like, this is the darkest thing I've ever seen in a video game.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up.
You keep fighting after the world ends. And in 4, the completely sombering story of Cecil. And just all that, there's characters in 4 who we need you to escape. We're going to give our lives. And then they die. And you're like, what just happened?
Death in Final Fantasy IV is cheapened a little bit by the fact that it could only handle giving you 4 characters at once. It didn't have reserved characters the way later games in the series did. So when they wanted to give you a new character, they had to kill somebody off. Some of those deaths were a little less story-driven than they were dictated by the needs of programming.
the beginning of 4, you go to a town and then inadvertently murder a bunch of innocent people just to find out that the king lied to you. And you're like, wow, this is actually heavy. Where 4 and 6 just repeatedly kept kicking you in the teeth with its somberness, I never thought 7 reached that place. I don't know about 8.
I don't think anybody knows about 8.
I was like, wow, this main character looks like... I saw a picture of Han Solo once, and I want to do that, but I want a furry coat collar at the same time. 9 gets pretty dark. Final Fantasy gets really great when it gets really dark. That's what we're trying to say.
You know, in Final Fantasy VI, near the end, when you finally confront Kafka, the final boss, he gives this speech that is just like one of the best villain speeches I've ever seen, where he's just like, what are you fighting for in this world that's already dead? Like, why bother? You know, what have you found that's worth going on for? Because this world is wrecked. But having said that, I think Final Fantasy VII is a masterpiece. And that's coming from somebody who does not like JRPGs, doesn't like the gameplay mechanic. I refer to it as Japanese menu torture. I do not like the way battles go in this genre, but if you're gonna accept, that genre is what it is, which is like picking fight off a menu a million times, and you're okay with that as gameplay, then the rest of it, I think, is really well done. I think the materia system is one of the better approaches to magic I've seen, where your spells are items that you can level up and like swap between characters. And it lets you make really cool combos sometimes. Like some of the material are spells and some are effects. And you can like have one that makes you, like a better spellcaster and then like do a bunch of attack spells or whatever. I thought that was really cool. I think the way that the game is presented is done really well, where sound and color and music all work together to create whatever kind of atmosphere you're doing. When you go to the ice cave and you find Sephiroth's frozen form, like everything is like blues and greens and cool colors, and the music is kind of like low key and like cold sounding. I think a lot of that is done well. The part where Sephiroth's in the archives reading up on his history, and like the music is really foreboding, and the way the camera is placed, and you see him just like wandering around, the way it's telling the story is like narrated, like he was up all night and that basement light never went off, and you're just like, oh man, something really terrible is about to happen. Like it's really foreboding. I thought that it was remarkably well done. Not even just for that time, but even now, like I'll watch videos of it, I'm just like, man, that is strong.
Final Fantasy VII is an achievement in video games, and I recognize that. And you're right, it's expertly put together. It's just those characters, they didn't really do it for me. But at the same time, I played through the whole thing, so it was doing enough of the mechanical sides, and I must have been having fun, or it was the only game I had, one of the two. I don't know, maybe after a little bit of distance, if I sat down and played it again, I would find the magic that I missed the first time. Maybe it just angsty high schooler. It was like, I'm better than this, which probably not true.
Yeah. I mean, flip side of that is maybe angsty high schooler, like, reads a lot more into the storyline and the dialogue and everything than a full-grown adult would. I'm sitting there going, oh, this is so deep and meaningful. And, it's like songs that you listen to when you're in high school and you're like, this speaks to me. And then you listen to it now, you're like, this is the dumbest song I've ever heard. Wannabe really doesn't speak to me. I do get knocked down and I get back up again, but it's not it's not what my entire life is. It's just a thing that happens.
My life's a lot about getting knocked down and trying to get back up again. So, I mean, we gotta decide Cloud's heroism, but should we decide Zack's heroism?
I mean, Zack is like not in the game much.
But he was tortured by an evil corporation, and he died presumably without giving them the information they wanted.
I don't even know if there was information at stake. I think they just liked torture. I think they were doing experiments.
It's like, hey, it'd be fun today? Let's torture some of our soldiers. It's their own people, too.
Yeah, they were trying to make them into better soldiers, and they just start like injecting them with like the life force that they're using to make electricity.
Hey, you know, it'd be a great idea. Let's inject live people with dead people's souls and see what happens.
What could go wrong? No wonder this guy thinks he's two people.
So, did they inject him with Zack?
I don't know. They might have. They injected him with Mako energy, which is the refined life force. So they might have just taken Zack's life force, refined it into Mako energy, and then injected that into Cloud.
For some reason, there's part of me that wants to say at one point I thought Mako energy was energy from sharks.
They did a PSP game, I think, that was called Crisis Core. That's like a Final Fantasy VII prequel. And that one has voiceovers. And in that, they actually call it Mako energy. But it's still spelled like the shark, like the Mako shark. Or maybe those are Mako sharks, and we've had it wrong the whole time.
I've watched enough Shark Week to know that's a Mako shark.
This weekend, Brad and Donald argue over pronunciation.
So maybe the guy who discovered it, his name was like Mac, but he wanted to be cool, so he made everyone call him Mac-O.
Mako!
It's Mako energy. And they're like, oh man, I hate Mac so much.
Such a dork.
It's a Mako energy.
He's like wearing like a Fonz jacket that he's not pulling off.
He's always wearing white pants. It's like, he's like, this is my thing. It's white pants and boots that aren't tied. They have no laces in them.
And a 1950s leather jacket. I know we love to play so-and-so, the hero is actually the villain, but I think Cloud is trying to stop a madman from smacking the planet with a meteor to suck up all its life energy. I can't make a case for Cloud being the bad guy.
No, I was going to say, I think in this case, Cloud trying to stop the end of all living things and basically an entire planet firmly sets him in the good guy category, who I don't know how or when he styles his hair, but he always just keeps that on point, literally. So, Cloud's a good guy. Barrett is a horrific merger of
man and weapon.
Yes. Tifa just wants her old friend back, and the real hero of Final Fantasy VII is Red 13, who I believe is the only one who survives everything.
Well, his kind, the lion dogs, have like a much longer lifespan than humans. So I think he just like is alive because he lives longer. I could be wrong. I don't remember all the plot. It could be that all the humans were wiped out at the end of the game and only the Reds survived. In that case, Cloud didn't really succeed.
Extinction got him.
Darn you, Extinction.
He couldn't fight that. Well, you think after Sephiroth used his power to throw the meteor into the sun, there was going to be a little bit of cancer in Midgar.
Probably.
That is a lot of solar radiation that literally comes within a foot of your face.
I'm just thinking, it is really easy for him to toss meteors into the sun anytime he wants, but, hitting the planet that he's on is, the whole game centered around that, and he's thwarted.
He should get better at magic.
Yes.
I don't even know what kind of magic grabbing a meteor out of space and hurling it into another celestial body is even called. It's gotta have a name. So, Final Fantasy VII, it's super bonkers.
Yes.
I kind of want to go play it again after this conversation to see if younger me was just an idiot youth who decided I was too edgy to like it. It's probably the case.
Yeah, I can't go back. I tried a couple years ago. I was like, I'm going to play Final Fantasy VII again. I just can't do the menu-based combat anymore.
So that does it for Final Fantasy VII. How did I do on remembering Final Fantasy VII?
Everything you said was more or less accurate.
Sweet. So next week, we will be talking about Brad's favorite bad PlayStation 1 game in the fall of 97 extravaganza, Felony 1179.
Yes, the game that to this day I can't decide if I love it or hate it.
I have never heard of this game. I guess I'm in for a treat.
You're in for a game, I can tell you that much.
All right. So if you can reach us at email at cartridgebasedradio@gmail.com. On Twitter, we're at cartbasedradio. Thank you for the people who came over after the Noid episode and followed us there. That was super cool. On Facebook, Cartridge Based Radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. I'm Donald. That was Brad.
Yep.
And we will see you next week.
If we need to reference the previous game, are we going to call it 3 or 6? 6. Okay. Because Square doesn't understand how numbers work.
Numbers are